started. If everybody would silence your cell phones, we're going to start as soon as our video stops, and then we'll be live. Good evening. Welcome to the November 8th meeting of the Historic Zoning Commission. I'd like to call the meeting to order. For information, the item 8 has requested withdrawal. That is the item of new construction and fencing at 122 Harlansdale Court. They've requested withdrawal for this meeting. So we'd like to get a motion to accept the withdrawal for this evening's meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Is there a second to that? Thank you, Ms. Ken. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next item, we'll entertain a motion to approve the October the 11th minutes. Those minutes were distributed in your packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Is there a second? Thank you, Lisa. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to abstain. I wasn't present.
Thank you. All right, with that one abstention, all in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, announcements, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair Roberts. I do have a handful of announcements. I do want to remind everyone that we are going to host a special DRC site visit at 3 o'clock on Monday, November the 15th, which is a week from today. I'm going to check that date. I'm going to hit the calendar correctly. Yes, November the 15th. It'll be at 418 Lewisburg Avenue, which is Collins Farm. The City of Franklin is working with the Daughters of the American Revolution who would like to use the site, and we're working toward an agreement for such to present. But ultimately, the discussion will be centered around a pavilion that is proposed to be constructed at the site for use for events. So we would love to host you out there to tell you more about the proposed location, the design, and get your feedback on that. And then we will adjourn and discuss that. That will just be the applicant, the Parks Department, providing information on that, and then we will discuss it, provide feedback at the regular 4 o'clock meeting here at City Hall that would follow that. So again, site visit 3 o'clock at Collins Farm, 418 Lewisburg Avenue. And then 4 o'clock, we'll have our regular meeting to discuss that item and then the others that are on the agenda. And I think we're looking at about 7 or 8 right now. I also wanted to note, as Chair Roberts stated, that item number 8 has withdrawn for anyone that just came into the room. And we want to thank Mr. Scow for his service on the Historic Zoning Commission. He is choosing to end his term here in December. So we are looking for an architect. Mr. Scow serves as our architect on the commission. The Tennessee Code Annotated recommends highly that the commission have an architect serve. So please know that we have submitted a notice to the paper and online. If there are any interested architects with experience working in historic areas, feel free to share that information. We'll be taking letters of interest until November the 22nd. If you have any questions about that, feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Are there any items to place on the non-agenda items category?
Mr. Chair, I had one more announcement, if I could. We are closing on the Merrill Williams house, and there will be a celebration at the house this Friday at 11 a.m. and anyone is invited to come who can.
It's really exciting.
Anything else? Any other non-agenda items that need to come before us?
Not that I've
Are
been
there-
made aware.
Thank you. Are there any citizens who wish to comment on items not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 1, consideration of preliminary historic zoning recommendation for Emmeline Acres subdivision proposed at the southeast and southwest corners of intersection at Mike Hatcher Parkway and Franklin Road. Kaiser Vogren Design applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to remind everyone this is the second time that this item has come before the Historic Zoning Commission for a preliminary recommendation to the FMPC in BOMA. The Historic Zoning Commission reviewed a previous rendition of this item during its June meeting and voted 8-0 to provide a disapproval recommendation. That item has been reconsidered, and the applicant would like to discuss the item before you today, which is a revision of that. The role of the Historic Zoning Commission at this juncture is to provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on how well the design guidelines can be applied to this development as proposed, if the intent of the guidelines can or cannot be met. The discussion this evening will not be related to density, traffic, road access. It will be specific to lot dimensions, building form, other characteristics on the site that would pertain to the historic district design guidelines. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay.
I remain confused how lot size and density, how you interpret one from the other.
Very good question. Let's let Mr. Vogren explain.
Well, I am
And
happy
Amanda
to
can
provide my comments, and I can elaborate on that further. So the property that we're looking at today is at the intersection of Machatcher and Franklin Road, south on each side. The historic Thomas Shute House is located here, commonly known as Creekside. And the applicant has acknowledged that the house is significant for architecture and has acknowledged the provisions in the zoning ordinance by providing some mitigation edge treatment between the proposed development and the property shown here at A. The guidelines recommend that this significant landscape continue to project an open rural appearance, and that the district provides an uncongested gateway into downtown that emphasizes the historic character and the agricultural heritage of this community as you get closer to Harlansdale Farm, and then the context shifts to a degree. Further, the guidelines recommend that the historic district here at Franklin Road ensures a balance of buildings and roads with open space, and that new construction is recommended to be compatible with the massing, height, scale, proportions, size, and architectural features of adjacent buildings. So that kind of gets into the discussion about lot dimensions. So a lot dimension, width, depth, defines the form of a building, and the form of a building is what makes a building more or less compatible with other buildings or incompatible with other buildings. Along with that could be scale, which would be the number of stories, and massing, which is generally the width, but also the width combined with considerations like building materials being heavier or lighter. So the question about how lots relate to density is that every district has its own context, and the lots can be dimensioned in such a way as to encourage a building form that is contributing to the character of the district or not. So while density itself is not a consideration by this commission, what is a consideration is what those lot dimensions are and how they reinforce a building that is of a form that is contributing to the pattern or the character of the historic district or is not. So with that, the applicant has worked very hard on this plan, absolutely. And staff has recommended varied side yard spacing and lot widths that allow for the construction of buildings that appear to be a single-family residential in scale and differ in mass and shape and height, so as to create a context that feels organic, so every building doesn't look exactly the same in width and height and appear to be developed over time. The staff has also recommended the use of informal plantings between the frontage buildings. And when I say frontage, I mean the buildings that are fronting Franklin Road. So we have recommended some plantings there to kind of help with the visibility or lack of visibility of the internal development from the Franklin Road frontage. The Historic Zoning Commission has identified Harlansdale Farm just south of here, south and west of here, as a development that is an appropriate guide for not just building form, but lot widths and spacing between buildings. And that has been mentioned several times during our conversations with the applicant about this. And so the applicant has looked to Harlansdale Manor to provide some of the spacing and massing considerations for the frontages of this development. Again, the buildings that front Franklin Road on either side. Harlansdale Manor measures approximately 125 to 175 feet in width for those lots. They are smaller lots. The lot size themselves will vary between 1/3 of an acre to 3/4 of an acre. But the lot widths are pretty significant. So the proposed lot that you see, the proposed lot widths you see here are pretty much in keeping with that for the spacing between buildings, at 55 feet between the buildings. There's some that are just a little smaller, but the applicant has widened these pretty significantly to better meet the recommendations of staff and the DRC. These buildings are multiplex buildings, meaning they are intended to have 4 units per acre. The applicant's or 4 units per building, excuse me, but the applicant's intent is that they be designed to have the appearance of single-family buildings. The interior lot widths are not specified on the east side of the road, but the lot widths for the west side of the road appear to be predominantly 40 feet. There's some that are 45 to 50 feet as well. So to be more direct, the guidelines recommend an uncongested gateway into downtown, meaning adequate spaces between the buildings as well as the lot widths. The buildings on Franklin Road at Harlansdale Manor are 55 feet apart. The applicant is proposing that for the frontages, but not necessarily for the interior of the development on either side. The spacing is unclear because it's not specified, but it does appear to be significantly smaller than that proposed for these frontage lots. As I mentioned, the applicants made significant revisions to the frontages by reducing the number of buildings and using a multiplex building in lieu of the individual single-family houses. So that would increase the massing, as we've requested a form that is more appropriate to the Franklin Road Historic District would be wider than narrower or taller. The applicant has also revised, the naturalistic screen between Creekside and the development so as to better meet the intent of the zoning ordinance and to protect the Creekside development from any sort of potential adverse impact of the proposed development. I do want to note that if approved, the Historic Zoning Commission will be reviewing every building shown on the development for issuance of a certificate of appropriateness, as we would review any building on established streets. And so we will look at architectural elevations and ensure compatibility of scale, massing, height, and shape at a later date if this development is approved by the BOMA. But since lot dimensions dictate building form, it is more difficult to provide BOMA and FMPC guidance to say that that this entire development as proposed on the screen would meet the intent of the guidelines. The applicant has done an excellent job taking into account staff's recommendations for the frontages. Admittedly, that is more of what you would immediately see on the roadway, is these frontage lots. But the design guidelines do apply to every building, and it is not clarified exactly how wide some of these buildings are, especially these ones that are marked yellow that are single family, but does appear to be significantly more narrow than the frontage lots, which indicate that the building form may not be compatible with what the guidelines would recommend for this area, which would be a building that has a wider mass. So in essence, the previous rendition has been improved upon, but the relocation of the wider forms to the front at Franklin Road, which was requested by staff to consider putting wider buildings at the front of Franklin Road, likely encouraged the applicant to put more narrow lots in the rear, and the narrow lots in the rear would not necessarily create a form that's encouraged by the design guidelines on either side. So with that, staff would recommend that the applicant consider additional revisions to this plan if brought forward. It is, with this current plan as proposed, recommended that the commission provide a disapproval recommendation to FMPC and BOMA. And so these lot widths and depths, which dictate building form, can be considered further. Thank you.
Mr. Vogren?
Thank you, sir. Good evening. My name is Gary Vogren with Kaiser Vogren Design. I'm a landscape architect, land planner, located in Franklin. It's good to see you all. Appreciate your time. As Amanda said, we have been working diligently with both historic planning, Kelly, Amanda, Amy, Joey, everybody in the departments to work through this process. We tried to work through the elements of Franklin Road. We realized that the three design components I see in the guidelines for this area, Franklin Road Local Historic District, is one, preserve a historic building. Check. Creekside Estate, we want to preserve that. Number two, provide uncongested gateway into central Franklin that emphasizes historic character and community. I think we've checked that box based on what Amanda and I were talking about, the frontage along Franklin Road, widening the home sites, greater setbacks, both side and front, minimizing number of units, uncongested, 6 structures on each side of the Franklin Road. The fourth design goal was ensure that there's new construction maintains a balance of buildings, roads, and open space. That, again, I believe we have done as well. We're preserving open space. We're providing roads that are on-street parking, parallel parking, slow down the streets, different types of lot sizes. So when I look at those 3 elements, I think that we've been working towards that goal. And it's positive to hear the comments that Amanda has said about the widening of the corridor along Franklin Road. That's something we've always talked about and want to get your guidance on that. I think we've come a long way to get there, but I think now what's come into play is that, sure, we've widened the lots along Franklin Road, but it kind of kicked some things back internally, which are not fronting Franklin Road, but have the same character and feel that I believe that Miles Manor has in terms of lot width. You have some lots that are 50 feet wide, alley loaded, non-alley loaded, up to 70s to 80s. There's a mix, and it's kind of the same density almost. We're at 2.42. Miles is around 2.3 or so. So we saw that as kind of mimicking Miles Manor in terms of lot sizes, types, character, alley loaded product, all rear loaded product, front facing Franklin Road. This site, in terms of its location, we all know it's got a lot of dynamic features to it. We are at the intersection of a very high traffic road, Machatcher and Franklin Road. We have a railroad track to the southeast of us. Do we really want to propose the larger lots along those 2 edges? To be debated. We have a church to our west that allows us to transition density from off of Franklin Road and move it to the tracks of the church. So we're just looking for your guidance, and we would like to offer some suggestions and get your ideas on some things. But I want to talk about that we'd like to reduce some density, reduce the lot sizes, but want to get your feedback. We'd like to potentially turn Creekside Estate into a home site. That was a discussion at the DRC that I think would be a benefit, because I think some concern was that if it's turned into an event center, maybe it loses status, I'm not sure, but if we can bring it into an estate, a residence, we'd be happy to do that. We would like to talk about what would be the minimum lot size you'd want to see internally. Knowing that Miles Manor and some other lots are down to 50 feet, we'd like to propose a minimum of 45 feet wide. The lots on the western side of the tract range from 40 to 50 feet wide along the church. The ones on the eastern tract internal, all those yellow lots, are ranging from 45 to 70 feet wide. So we'd like to get your guidance. Those are all alley loaded, garage rear loaded, on-street parallel parking, slow the streets down, the traffic. You can design a great looking home on those size lots. So we'd like your guidance on that, which will in turn reduce density. So if we had Creekside, maybe reduce some lots to make them wider, that reduces density, gets us potentially obviously lower than we are now. So we're just looking for your guidance and what you want to see, really. We've done a lot of work and a lot of drawing, but we want to make sure if we're coming back to you again, what do you want to see? And that's the answer we'd like to get and work with you all on that. So we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, are there any citizens who wish to comment on this application? Yes, sir. If you'll come forward and identify yourself and.
Hi, my name is Scott Layden, and I do attend a church that's just beside there. And about my main concern, I can't speak for the whole church, so I want to be really clear about that, would be that we have a good dedicated access to our church right now, and we would be moving that up to this road here, and then there would be kind of an incentive for people to come out and drive through our parking lot to get out the other side. And we have a lot of, preschoolers and a lot of people out there in the parking lot all the time, and we just can't have that be a thoroughfare. So I'd appreciate it if you would attend. I don't know what a solution would be, whether it would be allowing us to keep that road down there and just keep this blocked off, or, something, but just so that this neighborhood doesn't use our parking lot as a thoroughfare. That's important.
I'm happy to speak to that.
Okay.
To better clarify, the role of the Historic Zoning Commission this evening is to provide a recommendation to Planning Commission and to BOMA on the items that relate to our Historic District Design Guidelines. So any comments about the roadway access or the density or the traffic would be better suited to be presented to the Planning Commission when the Planning Commission considers this item. I believe that the applicant is planning to bring this forward to the Planning Commission for consideration in December. Is that correct, Mr. Vogren?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that would be on December the 16th? 9th. The calendar's a little different in December, so that would be December the 9th. If you are welcome to make those comments now, but the Historic Zoning Commission will not make a recommendation based on any of those considerations. Those considerations are made by the Planning Commission and then the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Mr. Layton, we do have a member of the Planning Commission exactly to my right, though, so he's,
Open ears.
yeah,
Thank
he's
you.
listening.
Appreciate it.
He's listening.
Yeah, it would be nice to keep it separate if we can, and, or, keep what we have, and then just block off that road if it has to be that little curly Q road down there for fire access or whatever. We just don't want it to be a thoroughfare.
I would suggest that you come to the Planning Commission then in that December meeting.
All right, thank you very much.
Are there any other citizens? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Lewis?
Thank you so much, and I appreciate the sensitivity.
Better identify yourself, even though we all know you, but we need for the minutes.
So sorry, so sorry. Pam Lewis, 4081 Columbia Pike. I used to sit on this board, and I used to be an alderman, and during my tenure as alderman, we created a design and a zoning for this particular corridor, and that was 2 houses to the acre. and it was meant to protect our gateway. And I just feel like this, while I appreciate the applicant, and I just feel like this is a lot of density and a lot of impact on a historic resource. And we don't have that many historic resources anymore. We've had impact on Magnolia Hall recently, now Creekside, et cetera. So I just would hazard going forward to be a little bit more particular with regards to what we're doing and to really create a buffer so that when you enter Franklin, you know you're entering Franklin. It's something special, and it's not Brentwood. It's not a continuation of Brentwood. And that's why I'm here to speak.
All right.
Thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
consideration.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Julie Fuller. I live at 905 Caleb Court here in Franklin. I'm the chairperson for the Board of Trustees of the Church of Franklin First United Methodist Church, and I just wanted to bring up a few points which will, I think, be of interest to the Planning Commission. So, Mr. Mann, thank you. I actually have a number of church members present tonight to show their support for the position of the trustees. If you all wouldn't mind raising your hands. Yeah, thank you. So the church property, it shares its eastern border with the proposed site for Emmeline Acres, which I think everybody's pretty well acquainted with, that shared border there. It's called Daniel McMahon Lane. For previous versions of the plan, approval had been contingent upon the church's agreement to vacate its right-of-way onto our church property, our current Franklin Road entrance, as well as allowing access through our parking lot on the north side to connect over to our Aldersgate Road entrance, which the church constructed. In the past, and still, the trustees have been unwilling to agree to a plan that requires abandonment of our Franklin Road entrance. This S-curve plan still requires, as you can see, it's got like trees sort of covering it, where I guess the idea is that it would just kind of return to nature. Traffic from Emmeline Acres onto our church property, which Mr. Bokren actually stated tonight that it kind of offloads density from Franklin Road onto the church, is our main concern. Having something this dense next to us coming through our church parking lot, whether at the north side of the development and the south side, or only the south side where this S-curve comes through. That open space on the church's property is where our Phase 2 sanctuary is going to be built. We have plans that have already been approved for our land that we have now, and we do fully intend to move forward with them. So we anticipate that end of our parking lot will get even more action than it does now with people coming in and off Franklin Road. We're also working with, having discussions with EMS, the county, and the hospital right now for building an EMS station on our property. So anything like this plan with this S-curve is concerning to us with emergency vehicles coming in and out of the church area off Franklin Road. It just doesn't look like it's a very good way for a fire truck or an ambulance to get to and from our EMS station. We don't have any solid plans or signed contract when it comes to that, but the trustees have seriously approved exploring building an badly needed EMS station on some of our acreage. The way things currently are with our Franklin Road entrance, the way it currently is, would be no problem whatsoever for the continued use of the church property and all the different ways we use it. We have a homeschool group that leases space. We have our preschool. We even have people that play pickleball in the parking lot. We really do use our space outside of the walls of the church. So it's concerning to us that our Franklin Road entrance would have to be totally abandoned for this particular plan to move forward. or actually for any iterations of the plans that we've seen so far. So I appreciate your time and attention tonight.
Thank you.
And
Are there any other citizens who wish to comment on this application? Yes, ma'am. Familiar face.
Pam Lewis, number 2. Lynn McAllister, 723 Fair Street. I don't think I'm going to say anything brand new, other than I totally appreciate your tenacity. Thank you. You hold our feet to the fire, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the changes that you've made. I realize sometimes, or a lot of this is subjective, or otherwise there wouldn't be a need for a Historic Zoning Commission. But Amanda's first words were rural, open, and uncongested. And to my eyes, in a subjective manner, it does not appear rural, open, or uncongested. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we're ready to deliberate as a commission on this, and let me just announce, Mr. Denton is recusing himself on this matter. Go ahead, one quickly.
Thank you. I was just going to say, there's also a balance between what Envision Franklin recommends and suggests, that we're trying to balance between Envision Franklin, be it either a for-sale product or a for-rent product, or just a variety of housing types, lot sizes. So we're trying to balance the Envision Franklin, what that guidelines are, in addition to historic. So we're trying to meet all those elements in one kind of design. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion?
I would like to know if there is any feedback provided to Mr. Vogren as he requested, that feedback be very specific and relate your feedback to the guidelines. Specifically, you can reference the recommendations specific to Franklin Road that Mr. Vogren noted at the beginning of his presentation. You can note the setbacks of buildings, the rhythm of buildings, and how they fall with the spacing between buildings, the widths of the lots, reference massing, height, scale, as you would for any sort of new development or new construction proposal. The design guidelines that would relate to this are the ones specific to Franklin Road, but also specific to new construction, is found under the infill buildings principal and accessory sections. Thank you.
I think those comments can come with our discussion now. But at the end, as far as suggesting or just giving options to consider, I think that's appropriate at a design review meeting and not necessarily here.
And, Mr. Chair, on a specific recommendation, this is worthy of a site visit. And it is worthy of us understanding what the setbacks look like on the ground, what the elevations look like on the ground, specific feedback. So I would support going to design review, and I would support a site visit. I think it's a project that is very impactful to the historic character of Franklin and Franklin Road.
So in effect, you're saying you're making a motion to defer?
To design review and a site visit, I'm willing to do that, yes.
Okay, to defer to what, to the December meeting?
To the December meeting,
With
and
a
that there be a site
Site.
visit scheduled with the setbacks marked off, and with us be able on-site to have some understanding of how this lays out. Because it's one thing to look at it on a sheet of paper, but we have done site visits for far less impactful projects. So I want to do that. I would like to recommend that.
And I'll second.
All right, thank you, Mary. Discussion?
I'll just keep talking a minute. If I had something to
You're on a roll.
say, if I had something to say specific, I feel like Franklin Road is very organically built out, and this has way too much regularity in my mind. So,
Okay, who else? Ms. Besser.
I'll speak for just a minute. The thing that I think really sticks out in my there was a mention about Miles Manor, and Miles Manor is more of an in-town development. And this is really a rural development, and I think we have to look at the context of the historic house itself and pull from that, and not try to design houses that don't really work with that context. And that, again, leads us to a lot size that is larger than what they're proposing.
Okay, who else?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and Ms. Besser. And also, I would say that I know that the applicant has said over and over again, and I believe that it's true, that they will go the extra mile to make sure that Creekside, the mansion, is preserved and taken care of.
Sure.
It's bigger than that, though, and I think you know that. That it's not just that building itself, but the surrounding buildings, and how consistent or inconsistent will those be with that historic landmark. So for that reason, I think Mary's suggestion to go on-site is a very, very wise move at this point.
May I ask that in an attempt to be very specific in direction to the applicant, that we be more clear on what we mean by being consistent with the Creekside property? I think I understand what you mean, but I want to make sure that it's very clear to the applicant and to the public what's intended by the comment to be more consistent with Creekside. And, to Ms. Besser's point, why what her recommendation for specificity would be to be more specific to this context as opposed to the Miles Manor context. Would you both care to elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll go after.
So I think that what I'm seeing here is that Harlansdale Manor has lots that measure approximately 125 feet to 175 feet. What I would like to see is at least 125 feet in width, so that you can do a house, say for instance, the style of the house would pull on Federal, Greek Revival, or even a folk Victorian. And that, I think the thing is that, quite frankly, I'm overwhelmed with the idea that we have to plan out all of these sizes. I don't think that's what I feel comfortable doing, but I think where we are now is something that's not conducive to keeping our rural character. And I think that, again, the context encourages the building, which works in a specific, time frame. And again, Miles Manor, the lots are smaller. You have different types of styles, like Tudor Revival. We're going to be looking at one tonight. And it's just a different feel altogether. And Franklin Road at this point is much more rural in character. And I think as a commission, what we're trying to do is keep that rural character. And by having larger lot sizes, whether they're exactly this, but I think, again, 125 feet to me is the minimum of what I would expect to see to have a house that really is supported in this rural character.
Externally and internally, are you saying, or just the lots fronting Franklin Road, or are you saying throughout the entire whole site?
Well, I think that, again, to ask us to tell you the sizes of every house, I can't do that. But I think we have to right now we have 90 feet to 235. And I think
Along Franklin Road, right, yeah.
What's that?
Along Franklin Road, correct.
Along Franklin Road. And I think that if we have, larger lot sizes and again, we need, I'm trying to design in my head here. And, you're very familiar with this property. I think we just have to think of it in terms of, show us a lot and what could go on it, and how would this look? And right now, we're looking at something that's very nebulous, and I think we need to, just look at, the lot sizes have got to be larger. That's just the bottom line.
Just so I understand, because I want to make sure we get guidance on this, is that you would like to see so we're showing basically almost half-acre lots fronting Franklin Road. And they range from 90 feet to 235 feet wide by 250, or 260 feet deep. So are those the home sites, that's the size you want to see along Franklin Road? Or are you saying all of the home sites within, internally, externally? That's what I'm trying to gauge. What,
Right, and I know you need more specifics, but I'm not a landscape developer. You know, I'm just telling you the lots need to be larger, and what we have now, it's creating a scenario that's the houses that are developed in that lot size are not going to reflect the real character in that area.
is it more of a concern what you see from Franklin Road or what's perceived behind Franklin Road, what you don't see? Is there any distinction between what you see on Franklin Road, because in this plan, you have a larger lot that's facing that matches Harlensdale Farm Manor, and some of the home sites on Miles Manor, much larger homes on the front, and then they start to get a little bit smaller, tighter, and as you kind of move into the neighborhood.
Right.
That you don't see from Franklin Road. That's what I'm just trying to get guidance on. Do you like the way that it's the larger lots along Franklin Road and it's going down in size internally where you don't see behind all these estates along Franklin Road?
I'm sorry.
Let me
Mr.
stop
Chair.
that right here.
I need to
I think
interrupt.
these are the kind of things we need to talk about at design review,
Right.
not here.
Okay.
I'm just
So
trying to get
I
guidance.
understand that, but, so I think this is the kind of discussion we need there. And that's why Ms. Pierce made the motion that she did, and that's what we're talking about
That's
now.
fine.
So does anybody else have any other comments on this? I will just say that I think we've got in our information that the district provides an uncongested gateway into downtown. And I think that means not only from a traffic standpoint, but from a visual standpoint. And I can't tell you, I don't have the expertise to tell you what that looks like based on this drawing, but I know what I see when I drive up and down that road now. And I don't think this does that. This keeps that. So as far as it means, based on what Ms. Besser was saying, number of units, I just can't go along with the number that's being proposed now. And so I think based on what Ms. Besser said, those number of units have got to come down. And then the lot width certainly has to be increased, is what we were saying, and by doing that, you decrease the number of units, I would hope.
That's what I was trying to talk about, yes.
So that's my opinion.
Yes, sir.
But again, I think those are the kind of discussions we need to have after a site visit and at a design review.
Okay.
So that's my 2 cents on it, so.
All comments at this point should be referring to the motion to defer that's on the floor and no more substantive comments on the actual project. So if we could get either a second or.
We got a second.
Okay,
We got a second, so.
okay, great.
If there are no more comments on it, are we ready to vote then? It is a motion to defer to the December historic zoning meeting with a site visit and the design review before then, if that's possible. It might have to be a special design review.
And just to clarify for the public, the December Historic Zoning Commission meeting is December the 13th.
The 13th.
Yes.
Okay, so we would have to do a design review, site visit and a design review either by next Monday or a special one before December 13th. Is that correct?
Yes, and we would not be able to accommodate one next week due to open meetings requirements.
Right, we've already got a site visit on schedule, so.
Can you guys hear me? I'm Christian Dial with the developer for the project. Thanks for having us here tonight. We would be okay with deferring our planning commission meeting for another month to allow for the timing of this all to take place and not try to rush things.
Thank you. I think that's a good move, and I think, as Ms. Pierce has said, the motion to defer and a site visit is going to be very important.
And I believe in another meeting, another historic design review meeting, I think you mentioned something about getting some building layouts placed onto the lots. We'll try to get that put in place as well. So
We need to walk the site and see exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
As far, it's easy to look at a drawing, but it doesn't really come into play until you've walked the site.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're trying to get to here.
Yep.
And then we can give a little more intelligent feedback
And we'll try to make that as productive as possible.
Yeah, we look forward to
making
that.
sure that, yeah.
And staff could easily accommodate a special DRC meeting between now and the December voting meeting, or we could accommodate a DRC meeting site visit in conjunction with the December one. The vote, the motion on the table is defer to have this item considered at December 13th.
Correct.
So the way that we have the motion now, the site visit would need to take place within the next couple of weeks. And with the holidays, it's a little harder to accommodate, so I just wanted to
We'll
note
just have to do the
that.
best we can do.
Absolutely.
Okay, we ready to vote on this, to motion to defer? Any other comments on that motion?
The only thing I would say, which Mr. Dow said, to do some preparation for the site visit, I think the church put up, if I remember correct, poles to show what the view shed would be from the height of the proposed
Oh, you're talking about the
homes.
Methodist Church. The Methodist
Did,
Church.
they
Okay, that
did,
was before
yes.
my time
And
on
I
the commission.
think that we would like to see something like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other items? Then all in favor of the motion to defer to the December 13th Historic Zoning meeting with a site visit and special DRC before that meeting? Please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, and one recusal.
I'm abstaining for purposes of this evening.
Thank you. Okay, you got that, Amanda?
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, we'll give it a second for the, y'all are welcome to stay. We've got several more items.
Good idea, Mary. That was good.
Well, maybe it would have been smarter just to have turned it down.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was saying. Okay, we're ready for item 2, consideration of alterations rooftop at 231 Public Square. Lines, Inc. applicant.
Thank you, Chair
Go ahead,
Roberts. The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the placement of 3 retractable awnings at the rooftop at 231 Public Square. This item did appear before the Historic Zoning Commission for consideration of a windscreen and shade structure at the property, and the item was deferred, and the consideration by the commission was that those would not be considered appropriate in light of the guidelines. So the applicant has returned with a new proposal. It would be 3 retractable awnings installed onto the building face that faces the center of the square. So that would be the fronting Public Square here. The retractable awnings are proposed to extend outward 10 feet each, and there will be a series of 3, and that they would span 18 feet across. The awning material and color have not been specified. The guidelines do state that roof elements, if installed, should be done so they are not visible from the street. The applicant has provided some conceptual renderings to indicate the vantages from a pedestrian view from directly in front of the building, both on Public Square's view shed and the East Main Street, which would be the left facade if you're looking at the building from the street in the front. Based on the information provided by the applicant, the awning locations recessed at the 4th story level appear to provide sufficient screening from the pedestrian vantages directly in front of the building. When retracted, however, the awnings may be visible from locations across the square, which would be the same street, however. So with that, it is recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission approve the proposed alterations with conditions. The conditions being that the applicant utilize a dark awning material to lessen the visual impact from vantages across the adjacent street. So if you're standing at the opposite side of Public Square, the same street, there is potential for view shed. So if a darker color is used for the material, it would lessen the impact visually. It would blend in more. That a canvas, vinyl coated, or acrylic material be utilized because those are determined to be most appropriate for awning materials for storefronts per our guidelines. This is not a storefront location, I'll acknowledge, but because there may be visibility, the applicant should utilize one of these awning materials as that's the closest thing in our guidelines that would provide that that feedback on that type of item, because I do believe that these may be visible from vantages across the street. The color and material specifications should be submitted to staff for review and approval in light of those applicable guidelines prior to issuance of a building permit. And I did want to note that a building permit is required for this item. The applicant should provide the Building Neighborhood Services Department with structural engineered plans for the retractable awning structure to confirm compliance with uniform design loads, et cetera. And then otherwise, that is all. Thanks.
All right. Welcome again.
Hey, good evening. Trent Sullivan, Lines, Inc. As Amanda mentioned, this item was deferred. We came back and we met with you guys on the design review, I think a month ago. And so we have drastically reduced the scale of what we want to propose to do up here on the roof. And it really is down to these awnings that are retractable. We thought those would be the best way to approach a way to make the space habitable out there and protect people from the elements. When it's fully retracted, it's about 4 to 6 inches wide, so it's about the width of a gutter. Certainly the client's open to color recommendations. They'd like to stay, if possible, within colors that are readily available, not go to custom colors. Hopefully a black or a dark gray, I think, is available, and so that's what they had in mind. As far as the actual awning material, they would propose a canvas, and that would also be in a dark gray or black color.
Okay, are there any citizens which comment on this application? If not, we need a motion to discuss.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve conditions of certificate appropriateness for the rooftop retractable awnings.
Thank you, Mr. Galvin. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Discussion.
Chair, I have a question.
All right.
The applicant. And that question relates to, did you consider awnings on less visible elevations of that rooftop? And what I mean by that is like on Third Avenue or, somewhere else that's less prominent than had a view shed from the town square.
No, we really didn't. We laid it out in conjunction with the interior layout where it would make the most appropriate sense from the users of the space. So, yes.
Could the awning be located on a less visible side?
Certainly, yes.
Mr. Chair, that was a comment that I had made earlier. The thing that concerns me is not so much the awning, but everything that comes with the awning to service the awning, which will be tables, chairs, plants, and to have that on the public square side, it would, to me, be preferable if it were on the East Main side, so that maybe the front was used more as a standing area, and the other, everything that comes with the awnings would be on the less visible.
Mr. Chair, to Ms. Pierce's point, I can't support the motion as it is, because right now we're shown that by the drawings that from the park in the center of the town square, the visibility might be be better, but you can actually see the awning from any place on the square. So I see visibility even all the way across on the other side at the courthouse, over at Mellow Mushroom, or the bank. And so for that reason, I would prefer to see it on a less visible side.
Okay, do either of you have a amendment to the motion? As to which side?
I don't have an amendment. I would rather hear, other than the most visible part of the town square, what the applicant would prefer.
Well, I do believe this meets the guidelines as specified for line of sight. It is supposed to be to the nearest right-of-way. When we begin to discuss where is it visible from, that was one of the questions I had in the design review. You know, if you have a taller building, can you see it from a taller building? Actually, the parapet is so tall and so wide that you have to get all the way up to the parapet and kind of lean over to even see down to the street. So the items that are on the roof, now there are openings. I think there may be another exhibit or another photo that might show where there's rail openings.
You have it on
Yeah.
the drawing.
And that previous one that you had up, Amanda, right? So that one is from the center.
And that's from the park.
That's from
where
the
the
park.
monument's
And-
located.
And that's with the awning sticking out 10 feet. It's still within that guy, but that's way further out into the park. So we've tried hard to limit the size. Certainly with it being retractable, it can only go about 10 feet. Even that's a pretty far stretched canopy.
And Mr. Chair, to that, I would say that to the guidelines, that the line of sight at the square would be anywhere within the square of the buildings that could be viewed, and that would be the line of sight, and not just the park in the middle, or at the sidewalk of the building.
Again, though, this is if the awning is open that you're speaking of, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, the beauty of a retractable awning is that, you can hide it. And I know that it's not ideal. We'd like to not have it visible at all. But I think the presumption with this building to begin with, and that the structure up on top, it almost calls for an awning, simply because there's area there. I think originally there was talk of a restaurant. So I think at some point, the awnings are inevitable. And in my mind, this one is probably the most suitable.
Mr. Chair, I agree with the comments. This is a commercial building, it's leasable space. When the building was approved, this was part of the scheme, that this is a rooftop restaurant. So
We actually approved some retractable awnings on the east main side, I think it was,
Yeah.
at that time. So, any other comments? Ms. Worthington?
In the paragraph that staff provided for us about bullet point number 2, the canvas vinyl coated, treating it sort of a storefront location type awning, and then a dark awning material, maybe one that would blend with the building, although we're not doing color options, but hopefully not anything striped. Something that would blend with the building.
That's certainly a condition that the commission's eligible to make here. I know we don't review paint colors, but since this is something, in staff's opinion, that would help provide a means by which to lessen visibility, and the guidelines recommend, no visibility, I do think that would be a valid, condition of approval if so chosen by the commission.
And one more thing, no logo.
Logos are signs, and
Signs are different. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Then we've got a motion to approve. Is there, let's just have a hand vote. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All, it's, you got that amended, 1, 2, 3, there's 6 of us. All opposed, please raise your hand. 3, 6 to 3 approved. And Laster, Pierce, and Besser with the 3. All right, we're ready for item 3, consideration of alterations, window replacement at 113 Second Avenue South. Luke Donald.
Windows of the activity wing of St. Philip Church at 113 Second Avenue South. This item did appear before the DRC at the October 18th meeting. The scope of work includes 4 windows that are facing Main Street with the possibility of 4 more windows that are also on the activity wing, but those face the courtyard of the property and would be replaced if the budget allows. The windows that are proposed to be removed are not on a historic part of the building, and therefore they're considered non-contributing to the historic resource. The applicant's proposed new windows would better match the divided light aesthetic of the windows on the other portion of the building that faces Main Street. And the new windows would fit into the existing openings and consist of wood and a composite material. Staff believes that the proposal does not impact the character of the district. Therefore, it is recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission approve the window alterations with the following conditions. The new windows must consist of either wood or a composite material with the appearance of wood, and the window specifications must be approved by the preservation planner prior to installation. The application must meet all of the requirements of building and neighborhood services, and then any additional changes to the approved plans must be returned to the preservation planner for review or approval. And in that condition, with the composite material, that it not be aluminum. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Regina Emanuel at Centric Architecture. When we met with you all previously at DRC, you gave us a few items to work on, and I think we have addressed most of those. We also made the drawings a little bit more clear. I think there was some...
Thank you. They are.
Yes, good. Yeah, I know before it was hard to tell what exactly we're doing, and we put that those window elevations up there to show you what is currently on an adjacent building and what we want to replace. And so we hope this meets the conditions that you all reviewed with us last month. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any citizens which comment on this application? Hearing none, need a motion from the commission to start.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve with conditions a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed window alterations.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Ms.
Mr.
Worthington.
Chair.
Okay, discussion. Any questions? Comments? All right, we're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is somewhere. Consideration of addition, accessory, and fencing at 810 West Main Street. Ben McCreary, applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of an addition onto the existing garage at the subject property. A sliding gate is also proposed at the fence along the property line at the rear. So here is the garage. It's located at the rear of the property, and the applicant has provided some great visuals to show that. So this is West Main Street. This is 8th Avenue. The garage is located here, and there is an access easement that allows the folks who live at this property to access their garage. So the sliding gate is proposed right here at the property. The applicant has shown some proposed alterations to that driveway, that access via easement. That will not be considered at this time. The applicant needs to provide additional information, and that may be forthcoming. So at this juncture, the Historic Zoning Commission is only asked to review the proposed addition to the garage and then the sliding gate mechanism at the property line. So here is the garage site plan. The applicant is proposing to add a side addition to the garage that is currently a single bay lap-sided garage facing east. The proposed addition measures 150 square feet and includes wood siding and some trim details that are indicative of the existing structure. What you see on the screen here is the front elevation on the top and the side elevation facing inward toward the back of the property on the bottom. The addition is proposed to include 2 pairs of double-hung windows on the front facade as recommended by the Design Review Committee, a pair of French doors on the left elevation facing into the yard, and 2 double-hung windows on that left elevation as well. All the windows are of a Craftsman light pattern as featured on the principal structure itself, and new architectural carriage doors are proposed for the garage opening. The guidelines recommend that historic outbuildings be preserved and maintained and state that the appropriate locations for additions are on rear or obscured elevations. The guidelines also recommend that additions not measure more than 50% of the footprint of a historic structure. But the guidelines do not differentiate necessarily between the footprint of enclosed additions on principal structures versus accessory structures. The Historic Zoning Commission has considered larger additions on accessory structures in the past when that placement is largely limited to the street view and the integrity of that outbuilding is left intact. So the proposed addition measures about 60% of the existing one-bay garage, and that's to allow for a continued use of that structure. It is largely hidden from view. It would be completely hidden from view from West Main Street and have very limited, if any, visibility from the 8th Avenue side as well. The addition is differentiated through a roof break and a 1.5-foot building inset, so it's inset backward so that it's not in line with the existing facade. It consists of vertical wood planks in the style of the existing fence. I'm sorry, I'm reading the fence part. It does not consist of vertical wood planks. It consists of horizontal lap siding, and it is appropriate in material, size, and design as such. As far as the fencing goes, the applicant is proposing to add a sliding fence, and this is a reference photo that is indicative of what you see here to the existing fencing. It is a vertical plank wood fence, and the intent of the applicant is when this is closed, you would feel that it is part of the existing fence, that you would not know that it was a sliding mechanism. The gate is proposed to measure 6 feet in height, tie into the existing fence, and while the guidelines do recommend against the use of sliding gates in front yards, the location of this gate is at the very rear with very limited advantages from public views. So with that, it is recommended the commission approve the proposed addition and the fencing alteration with the conditions that the windows for the addition be of a historic profile and dimension, consist of wood or a composite material emulative of wood, and that those specifications be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to issuance of a building permit. That the applicant must provide a signed and notarized owner affidavit for each applicable easement owner prior to installation of the fence, since it is in a shared easement, and that the application meet all the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department prior to issuance of a building permit. Thank you.
Mr. McCrary, welcome.
Thank you.
Any comments on the application?
I think Amanda said it well.
All right. Are there any citizens which comment on the application? Okay, hearing none, need a motion.
I'll make a motion And to approve with conditions, a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed addition and fencing alterations.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Discussion. Don't tell me. Okay, all in favor then of this motion to approve, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 2 for 2. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5, consideration of new construction accessory at 211 2nd Avenue South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a one-story, single-bay accessory structure at the rear of the property at 211 2nd Avenue South. This item also appeared before the DRC at its October 18th meeting. The proposed accessory structure is located at the rear left corner of the property and is behind the main structure. The scale at one story is subordinate in size to the main building. The wood lap siding with a 5-inch exposure is similar to the materials of the main building. And with the accessory structure added to the lot with the main structure, the lot coverage is at approximately 12%, all of which is in keeping with the guidelines. The applicant is proposing an attached exterior fireplace and chimney on the right side of the new accessory structure. Exterior chimneys are not typically seen in historic equivalents of accessory structures, and staff also believes it may compete with the left side chimney on the principal structure. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the new accessory structure with the following conditions. The applicant should make the fireplace freestanding off of the accessory structure. The windows must have historic profiles and dimension and consist of either wood or a composite material with the appearance of wood, and the window specifications must be approved by the preservation planner prior to the issuance of a building permit, and the application must meet all of the requirements of building and neighborhood services prior to the issuance of a building permit, and any additional changes to the approved plans must be submitted to the preservation planner or the Historic Zoning Commission for review and approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCrary, your
Yes.
comments?
I would like the commission to consider the fireplace, can you hear me? Just with the chimney and the size of it in relation to the main house, I did want to bring to the, just let you know that that main house chimney is about 30 feet tall, and it also sits approximately 35 feet forward of where the chimney is proposed on the garage. Also, with the orientation of the house, the way that the main house sits along 2nd Avenue, the garage and the chimney, at least half of the garage and all of the chimney is obscured from the street view. So it's really not going to be present as you're driving down the street or even walking along the sidewalk. So with those things in mind, I'd like you to consider the chimney.
Are there any citizens wish to comment on the application? Hearing none, we need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve with conditions number 2 and 3. A certificate of appropriateness for the construction of the accessory structure based on staff analysis and recommendation.
I'll second that.
All right, approved with conditions 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
All right, discussion. And Ken has seconded it. Discussion?
I think the chimney, if you didn't see the firebox and the hearth, which you most likely are not, it appears that it's associated with the structure it's attached to. So,
And to Mr. Sheff's point on that, I mean, fireplaces on an exterior will rarely be used. I mean, I think for the historic purpose of having like an accessory with a fireplace, of which I'm acquainted in Franklin, there are accessories with fireplaces and chimneys, and it can't be seen from the street. I think this will be behind the structure, and that's why I believe it does support or in line with the guidelines.
And I would support that because of the size of the lot and the low visibility.
Okay. Anything else? We ready to vote. Motion is to approve with conditions 2 and 3, but not 1. So all in favor of the motion to approve with those 2 conditions, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Done. Unanimous. Okay, we're ready for item 6, new construction at 185 Splendor Ridge Drive. Chad Gore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a principal structure with attached accessory at Lot 15 in the Splendor Ridge subdivision. This item appeared before the DRC at the October 18th meeting, and the applicant responded to DRC comments by bringing down the siding to the water table on the right elevation, and then also in the connector mass on the left elevation. The applicant also responded to DRC comments by altering the chimney profile to be more consistent with that seen on historic equivalents. Just as a reminder, the Historic Zoning Commission considered the Splendor Ridge subdivision for issuance of a preliminary COA at its April 2018 meeting prior to the development's approval, so as to provide approved direction to the final owners on pivotal building design elements such as height, setbacks, scale, and massing. The applicant is proposing the construction of a 2-story house with Tudor Revival influences. The 2-bay garage is recessed approximately 67 feet from the front facade. The proposed scale of 2 stories and height of approximately 36 feet, 7 inches is appropriate for Splendor Ridge and the Franklin Road Historic District and is consistent with the development's preliminary COA. The materials of the proposed new construction include brick, fiber cement siding with a 5-inch exposure, fiber cement paneling, cast stone headers on the front facade windows, iron railing along the entryway, brick foundation and chimneys, metal roofing on the front bay, right? No, on a side bay, excuse me, and asphalt shingle roofing. These materials are consistent with the guidelines. The application does not meet the guidelines in regards to proposed building coverage at 39.6%. Therefore, it is recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission deny the proposed new construction. If issued a certificate of appropriateness, the windows must have historic profile and dimension and consist of either wood or a composite material with the appearance of wood. The window specifications must be approved by the preservation planner or the Historic Zoning Commission prior to the issuance of a building permit. And the application must meet the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department prior to issuance of a building permit, with any changes to the approved plans being submitted to the preservation planner or the Historic Zoning Commission for approval prior to work commencing. Thank you.
Chad, welcome.
Good evening. Chad Gore, representing Mike Ford Builders, the applicant. The only thing I need to address, I think, is the building coverage. Point you to page 3, the diagram that we've looked at before, that just illustrates the platted and permanent open space around the development and shows us that when considering that open space, even with these individual lots, each built out to just under 40% lot coverage, the coverage of buildings across the entire site is approximately 13%. Other than that, I'm just happy to answer your questions.
Are there any citizens who wish to comment on the application? Hearing none, need a commissioner make a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve with conditions 2 and 3, certificate of appropriateness for the proposed new construction at Lot 13 based on staff analysis and recommendation dated November 8th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Discussion.
This is lot 15. I'm sorry, I
15.
might have made a mistake in the staff report. I apologize for that, but it is lot 15.
Okay, I
Right.
realize it.
Wayne, I get them confused too. Yes,
Okay.
15.
15, yeah.
Never mind, then we're gonna.
Back to the drawing board.
All right, discussion. Any questions on this?
I second
Yes.
it.
Brian? No discussion. Ready to vote?
I guess I'll just say in fairness, I think that the overall site plan says lot 15, but points to lot 16. But I may be missing that too. Not that may be part of the confusion on the lot number.
I've got
Yeah, maybe I
15 here.
fixed it. It sure does, look at that.
Yeah.
I fixed it on the
Oh.
one I have, but I managed to confuse you guys. so.
Oh, that, okay, based on that, but my drawing says 15.
How about that?
Yeah.
Now, how does that?
That's very strange.
Technology, that's what it
It
is.
is 16.
You're talking
15.
about lot 15.
1-5.
It's 15.
185 Slender Ridge Drive.
Okay.
Okay.
Nothing further from me.
Interesting.
Yep.
All right, all in favor of the motion to approve with conditions 2 and 3, please raise your hand. And opposed? One opposed. Ms. Besser. Consistent.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Looks good, Chad.
Okay. Item 7, next. And it is consideration of new construction, principal and accessory at 119 Winslow Road. Michael, and I can't pronounce your last name.
Casadis.
Casadis.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Eventually, I'll get this right.
So the applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a 1.5-story principal structure with an attached garage via breezeway at 119 Winslow Road. The applicant did appear before the DRC to discuss the proposal at its October meeting. So you do see a conceptual on the screen. This conceptual 3D model shows the elevation set A. There are 2 elevation sets. One is A, as seen on the screen, and one is B, and I will show that here momentarily. The guidelines recommend new construction be compatible in height, massing, scale, proportions, size, and architectural features of adjacent buildings, and that new construction complement rather than detract from the historic district. The guidelines do also comment on compatibility, generally being between 10% above or below the height of the average on the building block, or the block face of the subject property. The applicant's proposing this 1.5-story residence with English Tudor influences. The entrance is covered by a shingled swooping awning and has exposed rafter tails. A wing wall is located at the left corner of the front elevation, and a piercing tapered chimney is located to the right of the entrance. As I mentioned, elevation A is the one that was discussed at DRC. It is the one shown on the screen. It features a window grouping of 9 fixed units that you see here, prominent underneath the gable, vertically oriented, and elevation B, which I can skip to you. Give me a minute, I will find it. Elevation B is on page 24 of 45. So here is elevation B. You can see that it is altered in that it has 3 adjacent windows proposed for the bottom floor, and then a pair of 2 above that. On both sets, a wood trellis is attached to the right facade, as you can see here, and a 1.5-story accessory structure is located at the right, attached to the principal structure with a breezeway. So the applicant has provided a conceptual streetscape, which I will pull up. That demonstrates the information requested by the DRC and staff. as related to the building's placement and context, topographical changes on the east side of the lot, which is the Franklin Road side, to the west side of the lot, which is toward Jasmine Grove over here. The applicant is proposing to attach that garage form via breezeway at the right and rear of the property, so you can see that here. And, you know, the topographical information is very helpful because it does provide guidance to the commission on the appropriateness of the scale and the height in relation to the existing conditions. And then it also shows the appropriateness of the placement of the garage. It is recommended by the guidelines that garages be detached where they are historically detached, but that they could also be placed attached if placed in locations where they have the appearance of being detached from the streets. So it is a traditional appearance for the garage as demonstrated from this view. The scale of 1.5 is appropriate for the Miles Manor subdivision. The height of the proposal at approximately 30 feet appears to be consistent with the guidelines. The heights of the buildings on the same block face that you see here appear to range between 22.5 feet to approximately 46 feet, which you see at the infill building located here. The materials of the proposed new construction are listed as gray Tennessee limestone, a lap siding, and composite shingle, all which are consistent with the guidelines. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about architectural features. I'm going to go to elevation A, and I'm going to use the colorized because I know it's a little easier to see on the screen. Elevation A has a unique rhythm and spacing of window openings, specifically on that front facade underneath the main gable. This is not entirely consistent with the guidelines. The guidelines do recommend maintenance of the rhythm and spacing of windows and door openings of adjacent structures. This is a smaller scaled subdivision, one of the first subdivisions in Franklin. The lots are smaller, the buildings are smaller. There is English and Tudor Revival influences in the development, but they are not as high of a style as you would see on the elevation set here. So at the design review committee meeting, it was probably about half and half of recommendations from the DRC members that the windows be less grouped and less vertically oriented. So it would, even though it is consistent with this architectural style is a little higher style than you see in the rest of the development. So it is complementary, but toning down some of those elements could help lessen the idea that, you know, one's eyes might be more drawn to the infill building on the street than the historic structures that are existing, because this rhythm and spacing would be a little more unique than what you see in the rest of the neighborhood. The elevation B does address that. I did want to note that the rhythm and spacing of those proposed window openings on elevation B are appropriate and in keeping with the design guidelines. One additional note I'd like to make on elevation A, I do not have a firm interpretation, but it is believed that perhaps the zoning interpretation of the zoning ordinance that's related to transitional features may not permit elevation A as shown, because it is so different in orientation than what you see in the rest of the streetscape. Building coverage is at 35.5%, which is not entirely consistent with the guidelines. The guidelines do recommend that the maximum building coverage not exceed 35% in specified residential zoning districts, including this one. It is 0.5%, so it is mostly, it's not entirely consistent with the guidelines. It's largely imperceptible, but I did want to note the percentage, as we typically would. It is recommended that the commission approve the new construction proposal with the conditions that elevation B, which I will go ahead and pull up on the screen here, I believe it's page 24. Elevation B, seen on the screen here, be utilized for better consistency with the guidelines as well as with the transitional features regulations of the zoning ordinance. I do want to know if the commission does choose to approve elevation A, whether it be in tandem with B at the applicant's choice or just A alone. There may be an interpretation by zoning that it would not be permissible. So I would advise, if the commission would like to consider A, that it also consider B as well for a backup. Lap siding must consist of wood or cementitious siding. It was not indicated on the plan, of a 4 to 5 inch reveal for historic appropriateness. The application must meet all the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department prior to issuance of a building permit. And I do want to recommend that the applicant ensure that the accessory structure meet all the requirements of sections 5.2.7 of the zoning ordinances related to accessory dwellings prior to submitting for a building permit. Thank you.
Mr. Katsaitis.
Very good. Michael Katsaitis, MK Studio, representing my clients, the Andersons, for their new residence. To answer the last question, the siding would be 5-inch reveal, fiber cement board. Do we want to dive into some of the revisions that were recommended during the DRC? In the accessory structure, we did discuss trying to tone down some of the windows in the back in the art studio and the accessory building. If Amanda could go to those renderings. Oop, one more up. Anyway, we had a grouping of 6 windows in the back of the art studio. Now we've reduced it down to 2 windows right there. On the side elevation, we had a grouping or a set of transoms over that French door. So we eliminated those transoms, moved down the shed roof.
Yeah, I remember that.
Can you, it's not on that view. It's one down, Amanda. Oh, there it is. Right there, yep. So we eliminated the transoms. We slid down that shed roof with the bracketed shed roof and added a fixed window above that shed roof. As Amanda had mentioned during the DRC and the zoning requirements, that front door originally was facing the side. Now we've modified that as per the zoning requirements, and now it's facing the front facade with that swooped roof over it. We do want to be sensitive to the transitional architectural features. We do believe that the elongated window scheme, option A, does provide more of a 2.5-story massing, where option B, splitting those windows, creates more of a distinct 2-story rather than a 1-story facade that we're trying to achieve. So that the disconnected elements kind of pushes that window to that second floor almost, even though it's a 1-story space, or it's a volume space in that grand foyer. So with that said, we ask for your consideration and approval for Scheme A.
Okay. Are there any citizens which comment on the application? Mr. Anderson.
I'm Danny Anderson. We live at Harpeth Square, 159 First Avenue North, apartment 353 in downtown Franklin. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since our last meeting, I have driven all over town. I've read the Department of Interior guidelines. I've read all of our guidelines again. I was once on the Historic Zoning Commission, and had a really nice little speech prepared for you, but honestly, it gave me a headache, and I think it's giving me a headache to have to listen to me for that long, so I won't do it. But one thing in all the standards, it says in new construction that states that new design should be differentiated from the old. And in an article that I read that was approved by the National Trust, it says, as with any design, it's important not to water down the concept so that it turns into a mediocre ghost of the initial proposal. The goal should be allow the applicant's vision to come through so that he or she is satisfied with the process while aligning the design with the guidelines and standards. I think we've tried to be very sensitive to what is around us, but we are building a 2021 house. Some of you know that, and this has nothing to do with the commission, but Teresa and our house burned to the ground on Christmas Day, and we lost everything we owned, and are trying to regroup and rebuild our lives, which, as I said, has nothing to do with this. But I don't want to build a house that I'm not excited about and proud of. We love what Michael's done. We asked him to do an elevation B just to see what we might think about it. Nothing against Michael. We don't like it that much. But, and we did change the whole front entrance, which I found really interesting because zoning had us not to do the side entrance, that we had to have a street-facing entrance when two houses across the street from us that were built 100 years ago have side entrance front doors. But we made the change. So I just ask you, considering a couple of facts, considering that building takes a long time now to get completed, the fact that I'm 74 years old and I need to get the ball rolling on this house, we would respectfully ask you to consider Design A. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens which comment on the application? Okay, commissioners, we need a motion.
Well, one thing just for clarification, we did not turn down the side entrance. That was a city of Franklin. Just want to make that, say that. And what I thought I heard Amanda say is, hey, the city may not approve
A.
And I can clarify that. I do not believe that elevation A will be approved to meet the transitional features requirements of the zoning ordinance because the verticality it's much more exaggerated than you would see elsewhere on the street. So I would encourage, if you would like to have A approved, that you consider B as well in the case that A would not be approved through the building permit process. This is just to ensure that the applicant does have an elevation set that is buildable. It may be that alterations could be considered to elevation A so that it is less vertically oriented. For example, as you can see on my screen here, there's 3 levels of windows, the bottom, the middle, and the top. It may be that removing the top would help with the verticality and lessen it. So there are options here to consider that would allow for A. And I can't say definitively, but I would strongly encourage
both.
A backup option in the case it is not considered to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And that's just for the benefit of the applicant to be able to move forward with a building permit.
Well,
So assuming we get a motion, it should be with A or B is what I'm hearing.
I would like to make a motion that it be with A or B, or working with the architect and applicant to come up with a modification of the vertical desired window, because I have found one in a picture. So I think that rather than going to be that there might be a way to achieve more what the applicant wants if the city has an issue with it.
Okay, so let me summarize. What I heard was that we approve it with elevation A or B, or to work with the architect to compromise?
For a modification of A that would meet the city's approval.
Would you like that modification to be at a staff level approval or a
That would
commission
be
approval?
fine with me,
Okay.
and I can show you, Michael, what I
I'll
found.
be happy to.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ken. Other discussion or questions?
I have a comment.
All right.
I think that the design works really well. The only issue I have, and I'm sorry I wasn't here at the last DRC, is that the chimney melding into the front of the house, is it possible to have some kind of delineation?
No, it was designed to have, it's a very common feature on Tudor revivals and English Tudor homes to have a flush chimney like that, that pierces the roof.
Okay.
So it follows the architectural style of this Tudor.
I guess it just seems to me that it needs some definition. And I, I study architectural history, so I guess that it was the thing that when I looked at this plan or these elevations, that sort of stood out to me, that it just didn't seem to quite do what you wanted to do. But that's just my concern.
Okay, Josh?
Yes. First, thank you for the hard work. I mean, this is an impressive amount of work and effort, and it is very helpful.
It's been a fun project.
I
as well.
appreciate, I'm sure, I appreciate all that you've done with option B. I will say the color rendition, for me, I expressed concern at the DRC just about kind of the same comments that staff has reiterated in their recommendation about approving B. The color renditions just underscore that for me of A. I'm just concerned that it is not meeting the guidelines as well as it could in keeping with the transition between the homes. If we weren't constrained by that, I think it's lovely. Like, I really, really like it. But when I look at it in context, I just have to agree with staff's position on going toward option B. It concerns me a little bit that we're here on option A, and it may not even be permissible within the city. So I don't know how that's come up that way. But that, to me, just like the front door being required to be on the front, I appreciate that change. That's not something we could do anything with because it's a city requirement, even though the homes across the street have the side orientation. I understand that. Just it is what it is. But if A is truly not an option, it would have been nice to know that before now. So I just have a hard time. I think it's beautiful, option A. I have a real hard time getting behind that as opposed to option B, given the neighborhood and what our guidelines are.
Hypothetically speaking, I mean, theoretically, I guess, the adjacent house that's in the design phase right now, and it hasn't been presented to DRC or the historic zoning. What if these two new structures, even though you haven't seen 115, could interact with each other and make that new transitional?
I don't think I can comment on that because I haven't
Well, I
seen
know.
it. Yeah.
I understand.
None of us
Right,
have.
right.
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
But
right.
I've seen some sketches. And we do know that there's going to be some fenestration or articulation of a window pattern to the right of that gable entrance.
I'd like to interject, and I don't want to interrupt the applicant, but I do want to note that 115, as shown on this streetscape, is not approved by the Historic Zoning
Right,
Commission. We
right.
have not received an application for that. And while I and Mr. Casadas have seen renderings as you conceptualized by the potential applicant, that is not something that we can hang our hats on today.
Sure. And the other thing I would just say, and then I'll have said my piece, I would not support if we have an alternate A, alternate B, or staff level approval to kind of modify the window design based on option A not being permitted under Franklin zoning, if that's the determination. I feel like that should have been determined before we're here. And there's been so much discussion and controversy around this window that I wouldn't support just then throwing all that to staff at that point. I think that I'd be in support of option B.
Well, Mr. Chair, of course, I wish I had found this before I did, but I have actually found a historic cottage that has a similar, slightly modified, the windows that go up, slightly modified, and it actually, to me, reads amazingly well. But I didn't have it before now, so.
So I'd love to comment on that if I could. Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have the photo. Ms. Pierce did send it to me, and I'm able to pull that up momentarily. Window groupings of this type are very common on an English storybook cottage. We just don't have a lot of storybook cottages in this neighborhood. This would be the only one of this high style. So that's why staff recommended elevation B, because it is that higher style but tempered down to be more appropriately contextual to the existing street. I do understand Mr. Anderson's point about compatible yet differentiated. I totally respect that and appreciate it. I do think that the level of differentiation that has been presented by the applicant by the higher style is one that is not necessarily always appropriate. But with the toning down of the windows, which would 99% not likely meet transitional features, it's not for us to make that determination. It's for building and neighborhood services, and they have not received a building permit. That's why that hasn't been made, Mr. Denton. But ultimately, that is the compatible yet differentiated guideline that we're trying to, staff is trying to find met, and we do. I am trying to find this photo.
Can I wonder if I.
No, I do have it.
Okay.
It's just, I received a
And
lot of
I didn't
emails
do
today.
I didn't do a great job of I didn't get the whole, I'm getting ready to get a new phone.
Oh, look at there.
So window groupings are very, very common on this style. It's just, it is a more higher style version of a Tudor revival. So you see on this one, the windows are much lower to the ground than they are as proposed by the applicant, so that the headers aren't so much higher than the first floor roof line.
They strike the eave at they strike it at almost the same place, and it looks like that the wood detailing might be a bit heavier.
Right, our gable mass is a little larger than
That
this.
one, mhm.
Right, so.
So that was the rationale for those who
We-
had asked about why this is,
That's what
altering.
gave me comfort, was I did look up historic cottages and found this.
Great. Now, would that be approved at BNS?
At this location.
On this location?
Again, we are not able to make that determination right now, but in looking at the streetscape, the windows on the streetscape are not consistent with what the applicant's proposing, or the photograph from Pinterest here is showing. I can go to the streetscape.
Well, you can argue that elevation B would not be consistent either. Not to.
It's about rhythm and
Kick
spacing of window
elevation.
openings, and I do feel comfortable that the window and rhythm and spacing of window openings on elevation B would meet the intended transitional features.
And to compare the photograph that Ms. Pierce has identified, it looks to me like, I think it's lovely, both are. I really think that's beautiful. But the first set of windows in elevation A actually reads, the top of that reads to be higher than the front door, the top of the front door. So part of the first set of windows and then both of the second higher sets of windows are all above the height of the front door, whereas that version that Ms. Pierce showed, it looked like the second rung of windows was actually at the height. So it's brought down
That's why I said, could it be a
significantly.
modification?
Yeah.
We could, Amanda, if you could, I'm sorry to do this to you, but can you go back to elevation A? Either the color rendering or that, right? Actually, this black and white probably works just as well. What if we reduce the lower windows from 6 feet tall to 4 feet tall?
That would be
And
what
then
I think.
That will bring that whole,
Bring it down.
bring it down.
It'll drop it.
Yes, sir. And then enlarge that gable window, that's a single window, because now we're gonna have a bigger mass between the top of that third row of windows. So we could enlarge that window, similar to what option B is. And if we can go back to B, we can see that upper window on the gable is larger than the window on option A. Oh, well, no, sorry. Nope,
It's smaller, right?
yeah, it gets smaller.
Yeah,
My-
the window in the gable is recommended that it remain to appear like a vent window. So it wouldn't exaggerate to appear as a 2.5-story scale instead of a 1.5-story scale.
What Michael said, Mr. Chair, is what I would articulate. I think this, that would be what I had thought could come to staff for.
All right, but so we all understand each other on this, and we got a motion on the floor we're going to deal with, but as,
Staff will likely not make an administrative decision on this.
that's what I'm getting to. So what I proposed or asked the commission to consider is that we approve everything but this section of this house and have drawings come back to us at the DRC Monday or maybe it'll have to go to historic zoning next month to approve this section of the house for the windows. And in the meantime, find out from whoever, Building and Neighborhood Services or whatever windows that we're talking about, whether they're going to be approved or not be approved.
We can have A, B, and C.
Well, that's fine, but so come December, these windows, we know what we're talking about and we can vote on the windows. But everything else on this project is be approved. Now-
I'll make that motion.
All right, well, let's deal with this one first. It's already made and seconded.
Oh,
That was, some minutes ago, approved with A or B, or work with the architect for a compromise to the modification to pass city codes. And so, since we've got a motion on
I'll
the,
retract it
okay,
because staff said.
all right,
they
we're
were not
withdrawing the
going
motion. So we're back to square one. So if you got the gist of what I was trying to say, if there are no other questions about the project except for these windows, I would entertain a motion that we approve all but these windows, and that these windows be confirmed and approved at the next zoning commission meeting, December the 13th. And in the meantime, city staff find out, A, B, or C, what's going to be approved as it runs up the chain, and then we look at that at design review next Monday.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to check in with the staff. This is Mary Cruz talking. Are you guys okay with bifurcating the application this way and voting on some of it now and then deferring what seems to be the window part for a later meeting?
I mean, I've heard no other questions about the other part.
So I don't know if there would be any benefit to approving the new construction proposal sans window, like fenestration, because the applicant would not be able to submit for a building permit regardless until the window configurations is finalized. What it would do, however, is it would give, I guess, the applicant some comfort in knowing that the project is approved without that.
But you've got some more.
That's what I was going to ask, is perhaps getting some feedback genetically for the rest of the structure and the rest of the if we're okay other than that, so we can just focus on redesigning.
Well, that's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
But you've got more construction drawings to do.
Oh,
You're all done?
We're all
This is
done.
it? Okay.
So to answer Ms. Spencer's question, it could be done. It's not preferable, but it could be done. It would take coming back in December for the commission to finalize because staff, given the level of discussion as demonstrated tonight, staff does not feel that there would be enough administrative support to be able to ensure that we are approving what the commission intends.
Well, that's what I was getting to. So I don't want to put you in that position, but I want to know, I don't want us to decide something, and then you come back and say, well, whoever up the line will not approve that.
Okay.
Well,
Mr. Chair, I move that we defer this application to the next voting meeting of the DRC.
Okay. Of the zoning commission. It'd be
Zoning
the
commission.
December 13th
Of the
meeting.
zoning commission.
So we're deferring the whole thing. If nothing can be accomplished in between with the rest of the project, then that's probably the best thing to do.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would move to approve it as submitted with staff comments, and if they want to come back, they can. If they want to move forward, they can.
So
we
we
just
have a
had a motion
deferral
to defer.
motion.
Well, the deferral motion takes precedent over
Okay.
anything else. So,
Okay.
So let's, is there a second to the? All right, Lisa's seconded deferral. All right, any discussion on the deferral?
Okay, now I can say, right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that just to, since the applicant came forward with two options, and staff thinks one of them can be approved, I think most of the board is comfortable with option, is it 2 or
B.
B?
B.
Then I will not be supporting a deferral.
Okay. All right, then,
To Mrs. Pierce's point, if the commission is comfortable with option B, I would recommend approving option B so the applicant can move forward. If the applicant chooses to bring back a revision, that would be something that they could choose to do in December.
Right.
say that again.
So if the commission's comfortable with a single elevation set, I would recommend moving forward with an approval for that, as I've given this evening with elevation B. The applicant has always the option to bring forward a different fenestration pattern for you to consider at a later date.
We are fine with that.
Yeah, so they
So-
could come to the December, or the November DRC. I can put them on the agenda for next week, and we could talk about window styles. I can get more information from Building and Neighborhood Services in the meantime on what would be and may not be supported.
So in other
Not
words,
trying to talk for Mrs. Spears, but I think she was saying, I don't know, if we can resolve the window pattern staff and not the whole commission. Was that where you were?
No,
No.
no, not at all. What
Okay.
we're saying is, if you
They've
approve
said they don't
a
wanna do
set
that.
tonight, staff will not
Okay.
administratively approve a window
Then let's-
pattern.
let's-
So I
do that.
am making, my voice known that I'm not supporting a deferral, that I would prefer for us to approve option B. And then if they want to come back with something else, they can, but at least they can move
Okay.
forward with option B, if everyone is comfortable with it.
Okay, well, we've got you got a comment on the deferral?
I do.
All right.
To Mrs. Pierce's point, I think that accomplishes what we were discussing earlier, which lets them move forward. They could go ahead and apply for building permit, what have you,
Right.
have that discussion about altering the front windows. It lets
Got
them
it.
not be tied up and waiting for a December meeting, so they can move on.
I
And then
appreciate
if there
that.
is the desire to come back to try to get a change, if they think they can enter the code and make revisions, we can deal with that at a later point. So for that reason, I would not be in support of the deferral either.
Okay, all right, well, let's deal. Any other comments about the deferral? Otherwise, all in favor of the deferral, please raise your hand. Ms. Besser? All opposed, raise your hand. Okay, it's defeated. So we come back to your another motion, Mary.
Okay, I move to approve with staff comments. Isn't that it? For this house
And
project?
I'll second it.
Okay, comments. Are there any other comments about the project without the front windows?
Well, no, we're approving option B for the
Yes.
front
Okay,
windows.
all right, you're right. All right, Mike, sorry. Getting late. Okay, any other comments about this? Then all in favor of the...
Well, are you asking that the fieldstone be brought back to staff to sign off on?
condition added.
I would like to add that condition.
What's that condition, I'm sorry?
Stone brought back for staff approval.
Approval.
You had a sample, I believe, at the DRC,
Yeah.
did you?
And I have images of that stone online.
Yeah, if you
Yeah,
would
but
just
the
bring
actual
us
piece of
that.
stone.
Sure, it's in my office, sure.
And I think it's a little darker than what this,
And
The
if,
color rendering?
yeah.
It's so difficult to get
I
that.
understand, but
Yeah.
I think shade
It is, it
darker.
yeah, and that
And,
would,
and it has a bigger variance of colors as
yeah,
well.
and that would need a second.
I'll second it.
I'm just making it part of your original motion, but that's fine. It is. All right, so our motion is to approve the project with option B, windows, and the staff, have the stone brought back to staff for approval. So, any other comments? Then all in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Good job, Mary.
All right. Good job. Next, Amanda, you've got some other,
So item 8 was withdrawn by the applicant. It will be added to the DRC agenda for Monday, so you are encouraged to keep your items so that we can discuss it at that time. I believe that's, we covered all of staff's items, announcements, but I do have a couple items on the agenda. One is an amendment to the current 2021 calendar. I will admit that I created the 2021 calendar before the city holiday schedule is finalized. And so there is a date on there that would, that for an application submittal that falls on a city holiday. So essentially, we're just pushing that forward a day so that it's clear for the public. I cannot change that date without your approval, however. So that is the item before you. There's also a proposal for the 2022 meeting calendar, the watermelon colors on there. They didn't look like that on my screen. But the watermelon sugar calendar is there for your consideration for 2022. I did want to note some fun things, though. The DRC application process is now all online. So you can see on the bottom of that the application instructions are a little different.
That's great.
They can submit that through IDT. What that will mean for you all in the future is that, like the agenda I sent you for historic zoning that has the links, the DRC one will have links. And so you won't get 3-4 emails from me with all those attachments. You will get a single email with the linked agenda, and you'll be able to access it that way. So we're beyond excited about that, and I hope it'll make it helpful for you as well. I know Josh is really excited about it. So unless you have any questions, I do think you could approve those both in the same motion if you'd like.
okay, so we need a motion to approve the change on the 2021 meeting dates and approve the 2022 proposed meeting dates for both historic zoning and design review. If someone would make that motion. Thank you, Nick. Is there a second?
Second.
Josh?
Did you make the motion in?
All right, we're doing it all.
Motion. You didn't take mine.
That's terrible that you would make such a motion, or second such a motion, Ken.
I think he made
Since
the
he
motion.
won't be here.
And seconded,
Yeah, and
but you took somebody else.
I know, I took somebody else. I knew that was. No.
You can defer?
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, what else you got, Amanda?
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Brian. All right, all in favor, please stand. Dismissed.